All right, last video of the next to the last unit. It's almost Christmas time too. So make sure you have guided notes E, because this is EdpuzzleE. And what is this last video about? This last video is about multi-step factoring, and you might want to keep this flow chart in front of you. This gives you an idea, a roadmap of where do you go when you see a problem, okay? But we're going to work through the problems on guided notes E, so make sure you have guided notes E in front of you, and let's dive right into it. What's kind of bad about it is because we are mixing different kinds of factoring together. All right, so let's see. The first example that you see on your paper is this one, all right? And it tells you a hint up here. Hint, always look for greatest common factor first, no matter what. In fact, it tells you on this roadmap, all the way at the top, always look for a greatest common factor first. Then you may not even have one. But after you figure out if you have a greatest common factor, you will go off of this depending on how many terms you have. Now, we didn't cover 4 terms, so we won't even go in this direction. I hope that's not on the SOL. I may show you that maybe later, but we're not going to go in that direction yet. We're only going to do 2 terms and 3 terms. All right, number 1 on your guided notes there is 2x squared plus 8x minus 90. Do we have a greatest common factor? Is there a number that goes into 2, 8, and 90? Yes, there is. There is a 2. But can I take out an x? Can my greatest common factor have an x on it? Hopefully you said no, because the last term does not have an x. So we cannot include an x on our greatest common factor. So we're just going to put a 2, and we're going to divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. And that's going to give me x squared plus 4x minus 45. Now what you need to do is pretend like that 2 is not even, cover up the 2 and look at this. What kind of factoring is that? Well, look at your sheet. How many terms do you have? It's 3 terms. Is it an easy trinomial? This is the easy trinomial. Or is it a difficult trinomial? All right, this one's an easy one. Why? Because it doesn't have a number in front anymore. That 2 is not really in front anymore. How do you do an easy trinomial? Do you remember the x? You put negative 45 on the top, 4 on the bottom. Can you think of 2 numbers that multiply to negative 45 and add to 4? Hopefully you can. It's 9 and 5. Now they need to add together to give you positive 4, so that would make the 5 negative. So you're going to write down x plus 9, x minus 5, but don't forget there's a 2 in front. That was the greatest common factor you took out on the first step. All right. Now, number 2, what is the largest number that divides into 27 and 75? Hopefully you can either figure that out or use Desmos to figure it out, but it's a 3. Now, what about the x's? I've got a 4 and a 2. What's the smaller of the 2? The smaller of the 2 is x2. And what about the y's? That's a 1 and that's a 1. What's the smaller of the 2? Y to the 1. You don't need to write the 1. Now let's figure out what's left. Let's divide both of these by 3x squared y. All right, so 27 divided by 3 is 9. x4 minus x2, that's, well, you divide, but you subtract the exponents. That's x2. The y's are gone. Look at that. 75 divided by 3 is 25. Let's see, that's x squared. It's hard to read, but that's x squared over x squared. The x squares are gone, but so are the y's. The y's are also gone. So the only thing that's left on that term is a 25. All right, now I've got 2 terms. The only thing you've got for 2 terms is it the difference in squares? Now, is that a perfect square? Yes. Is that a perfect square? Yes. Is it difference? Yes. If the answer to any of those questions were no, you would stop right here and you would be done. But this is dots. This is dots. So we need to break that up all the way. So we're going to write it like that. And remember, what's the square root of 9x squared? 3x. You got to put it in both places. What's the square of 25? 5. 1 gets a plus, 1 gets a minus. And don't forget, keep your greatest common factor in front. So that was example number 2. Now, what's example number 3? All right, what's example number 3? All right, I wrote it down somewhere. Oh, here it is. It's right here. This example number 3. All right. Now, what is the largest number that divides into 12, 38, and 14? The answer is 2. I've got an x3, x2, and an x1 was the smallest of the exponents. It's an x. Now, remember, if there was no x on that term, you would not be able to put an x here, okay? But there is. Now, what's left? That's divide everything by 2x, divide everything by 2x. That's going to be 6x2 plus 19x minus 7, all right? This is a difficult trinomial. So we're going to have to use, now on the sheet, it says slip and slide. I don't use slip and slide. We use my father drives a red motorcycle. That's the method we use. Remember that? My father drives a red motorcycle. Now, pretend like the 2x is not there. Just cover up the 2x. Pretend like it's not there. All right, so with the first step is multiply. You're going to take the 6 off and multiply it by the 7 on the end. That gives you a 42. That's the multiply step. Now, factor means make the x. We've got negative 42 up here. We've got 19 down here. Can you think of 2 numbers that multiply to 42 that might be able to add to 19? Well, 7 and 6, there's no way that's going to work. How about 21 and 2? That multiplies to 42. Is there any way that you can make 21 and 2 come out to 19? Yes, you can, if you make the 2 negative. All right, so we have factored it now. That's going to be x plus 21 and x minus 2. But we're not done yet. Now we have to divide. That's what the D stands for. What do you divide by? Whatever number that you peeled off and multiplied by 7, that was a 6. We've got to put the 6 back. All right, that's the divide step. Now, the next is the reduce step. Do these reduce? Yes, they do. That divides by 3, so that's going to be 7 over 2. 2 over 6, that reduces by 2, so that's going to be 1 over 3. We did the reduce step. Now it's the move step. What does move mean? You move the 2 back in front of the x, move the 2 back in front, move the 3 back in front. Now, one thing that I have forgotten, make sure you remember that 2x that you took out, put that back in front right there, and there you go. Now, the last example we have to do, the very last one, it's kind of a trick question, all right? It's a trick question, all right? 50 and 98, what's the biggest number that goes into 50 and 98? It's a 2. That's x3, that's x1. I can take out a 2x to the 1. So let's divide by 2x to the 1. You will get 25x squared plus 49. Now, is that dots? Is that dots? You can't read that. Is that dots? Yes or no? And the answer is no. It has to be a minus to be dots. So this cannot factor anymore. So don't do that. If it's the sum of 2 squares, you are done. You can't go any further than that. So that one was only a 1-step factoring. We are done with Unit 10. We are done with Unit 10. All right, is it time to celebrate? Yes, it is time to celebrate. We have one more unit to do, then we can really celebrate. So one more unit, and we'll be done. But doesn't it feel good to only have 1 unit left? Yes, it does.